Today, we are diving into one of the boldest, most controversial political moves in modern Indian history, the revocation of Article 370. This is a story about a 70-year-old constitutional puzzle, a secret plan, and a single day that literally changed the map of India. So let's get right into it.
Our story kicks off on August 5th, 2019. Imagine this. The sun is coming up over the beautiful Dal Lake in Srinagar, but instead of the usual morning hustle, there's this eerie, heavy silence across the entire Kashmir Valley. You could just feel the tension in the air. Something huge was about to go down.
The very first sign that something was off? Digital darkness. Overnight, the internet was gone. Mobile services? Dead. The entire region was suddenly cut off, not just from the outside world, but from each other. No calls, no messages, no news. Total information blackout. And then, the political chess pieces were taken off the board. We're talking about prominent Kashmiri leaders, former chief ministers like Omar Abdullah and Mehbooba Mufti, all of them placed under house arrest. In just a few hours, the region's entire political leadership was completely neutralized. Out on the streets, it looked like a scene from a movie. It was a ghost town, but a ghost town patrolled by thousands and thousands of soldiers. A strict curfew was slapped on under Section 144, which means no public gatherings at all. The message was loud and clear. Whatever was coming, the government was ready for a major reaction. So, while Kashmir was in this state of suspended animation, the real drama was unfolding hundreds of miles away in Delhi. Inside the Indian Parliament, Home Minister Amit Shah was getting ready to make an announcement that would finally answer a question that had been lingering for 70 years. The entire country was holding its breath. Okay, so to really understand just how massive that moment in 2019 was, we need to jump in a time machine and go all the way back to 1947, back to the very beginning of modern India and the complicated birth of this thing called Article 370. So here's the quick history. Back in 1947, the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir decided to join India. Now, to deal with its unique situation, Article 370 was written into the Constitution in 1949. But here's the key word. It was always meant to be temporary. The plan was for a local assembly to finalize the details later. But then in 1957, that assembly dissolved before it could finish the job, leaving the article kind of frozen in time. So what did this article actually do? Well, it gave Jammu and Kashmir a special status that no other state in India had. It meant they could have their own constitution, their own flag, and pretty much make their own rules for everything. The Indian central government's power was limited to just 3 things: defense, foreign affairs, and communications. That's it. Now, as you can imagine, this special status was a huge point of contention from day one. For the next 7 decades, this article, along with another one called Article 35A, created a completely different reality for the people living in Jammu and Kashmir, and it was often a source of major conflict. And this special status had very real, everyday consequences. See, Article 35A, which came out of 370, created a special class of permanent residents. Only they could own land or get government jobs there, so if you were from any other part of India, you were locked out. It also had this really discriminatory rule where women from the state would lose their residency rights if they married an outsider, a rule that, by the way, didn't apply to men. This whole situation created a deep sense of unfairness across the country. Right from the start, you had political leaders like Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee making a very simple argument. You just can't have one country with 2 sets of rules, 2 constitutions, and 2 flags. And that idea became a powerful political force against this special status for decades. And the consequences? They were absolutely devastating. Critics argued that this sense of separation fueled separatism and cut the state off from the rest of India's economy. This created a lot of unemployment and frustration, especially among young people, which became fertile ground for a violent insurgency, an insurgency that was actively supported and exploited by Pakistan. The human cost was just staggering, with more than 40,000 lives lost. For decades, touching Article 370 was seen as politically radioactive. No government was willing to go near it. But after 2014, a very careful, very deliberate political strategy started to unfold, setting the pieces on the chessboard, one by one, for the final move. Okay, so here's how this stage was set, step by step. First, in 2015, a very unlikely coalition government was formed in the state. Then, in 2018, that coalition fell apart. This triggered a specific constitutional process. First, governor's rule, and after that, president's rule, which basically means the central government in Delhi takes direct control. And crucially, during all this, the local state assembly was dissolved. Now this was the absolute game changer. With the state assembly gone and president's rule in place, all the lawmaking powers of Jammu and Kashmir were temporarily handed over to the national parliament in Delhi. So now, the central government had the legal authority to make decisions for the state. Which brings us right back to Parliament on August 5th, 2019. All the pieces were perfectly in place. The stage was set for a constitutional masterstroke that was designed to get around the very obstacle that had made Article 370 seem untouchable for over 60 years. Okay, so here's the legal knot that everyone thought was impossible to untie. The Constitution said that to get rid of Article 370, you needed the consent of Jammu and Kashmir's Constituent Assembly. The problem? That assembly, as we said, was dissolved way back in 1957. It didn't exist. This is why for decades everyone just assumed Article 370 was permanent. But here's the key that unlocked the whole puzzle. A presidential order was issued that tweaked a different article, Article 367, which is basically the Constitution's instruction manual. And this order said something really simple. From now on, whenever you see the words Constituent Assembly, you should read them as Legislative Assembly. And since the powers of the Legislative Assembly were currently held by the Indian Parliament, well, the path was suddenly wide open. With that legal hurdle cleared, the Home Minister introduced the resolution to Parliament. And despite a massive uproar from the opposition, the vote in the upper house was decisive, 125 for, 61 against. The very next day, it sailed through the lower house with an even bigger majority. It was done. So what did all this mean on the ground? Well, the changes were huge and immediate. Article 370 was made powerless. Article 35A was gone. The entire Constitution of India now applied to the region, no exceptions. And the state itself was split into two new centrally governed territories, Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. You have to remember, this move completely shattered decades of political thinking. Senior leaders, people who had been in the game for years, had repeatedly said that removing Article 370 was just not possible. They truly believed the constitutional lock was unbreakable. But on that day, through this incredible mix of careful planning, raw political will, and a very clever constitutional move, what everyone had called impossible for 70 years was taken apart in just a matter of hours. A temporary provision had finally and dramatically met its end, forever rewriting the destiny of Kashmir.